Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Before we start, I just want to let you know, up in the front podium here, there's a list of votes, or actually they're the positions of the Select Board and the Finance Committee, and they're updated. So if you want that, they're in the front. And we also have the pre-town meeting schedule, which is really a schedule of what we're going to talk about tonight and in what order. So my name is Dory Vecchio, the interim town manager, for those of you that don't know me. And tonight, I would like to, first of all, thank you for being here. This is an extremely important town meeting. I think you'll all agree, and your positions in the town as town meeting members is so important. Right now, and this evening, we're going to talk about some very important issues that will have consequences for the town of Auburn moving forward for many, many years. So I'm grateful that you're all here. The first thing I'd like to do is just introduce who's up here, although I have one leaving. Who's up here? We're going to help to answer any questions. And we have other department heads that need to come up. So we're here to answer your questions on any of the warrant articles that you have. We also have people here that have submitted citizens petitions that will be here also to answer your questions. And we're going to have a couple of presentations. One will be the budget presentation on the town side. The other will be the budget presentation for the school side. When the school does speak, they're also going to discuss two of their articles that they have as well. After they speak and do their presentations, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask at that point. Raise your hand, speak as loud as you can. If you can go to the podium, that would be best, because this is being taped and most people may want to see this if they cannot make it here tonight. So I encourage that. So first of all, I introduce myself. If you could introduce yourself.
Good evening. I'm Karen Harnois. I'm the CFO town accountant.
Seth Woolard, Chief Assessor.
Steve Coleman, Fire Chief.
Nick Schwartz, Assistant DPW Director and Sewer Superintendent.
Joanna Paquin, DPW Director and Town Engineer.
Dr. Adam Menard, Town Planner.
Good evening, Darlene Coyle, DDIS Director and Health Director.
Thank you. So we are hoping to be able to answer all your questions this evening. And what I'm going to do is we are going to start right from the top with Article 1. I'm not going to read the articles. We'll be here all night. You guys, if you guys have, hopefully you have your books so you can follow along. But at each article, the person who's responsible for the article, who has sponsored it, will explain what it is very briefly. And if you have any questions, then please go to the podium and we will do our best to answer them. But like I said, we're going to start. We're going to start with the budget, which is, first of all, Article 1 is the vote of FinCom and the Board of Selectmen, which is up here, which everyone has. Article 2 through 11 are standard articles that are at every town meeting. In this section, you're going to first listen to Karen Harnois, who is the Chief Financial Officer. She's going to speak to you about the fiscal year 26 budget, revenue, and capital budget. And right after that, under the same group of articles, Beth Chamberlain, the Superintendent of Auburn Public Schools, will present her budget and discuss Articles 14 through 17. Like I said, you'll be able to ask questions. So we'll start with Karen. Thank you.
Good evening. As I said, I'm Karen Harnois, the CFO town accountant, and I'm going to go through the Town of Auburn FY 2026 budget. This first slide shows a overall summary of the budget with the appropriations at 86.2 million, the revenue sources at 86.2 million. There is a small excess of $192 in the fiscal year 26 budget. And overall, we're maintaining the excess levy capacity of 9.3 million, and this budget does tax at 100% of the Prop 2.5. The next slide shows the FY26 revenue and expense projections. The revenues, we're going to talk about a couple of different categories. They're broken down between local receipts, cherry sheet receipts, the tax levy, debt exclusions and available funds, for a total revenue of 86.228,639, and the appropriations 86,228,447. Now we'll just start out with the tax levy. The tax levy base for fiscal year 26 is 56.9 million. If we add the 2.5% increase that we're allowed, the 1.4 million, and the estimated new growth, which is projected at $1 million, that brings us up to a levy of just over $50 million. Now, the levy limit for fiscal 26 is 59.3, and that's how we have the excess levy capacity of the 9.3 million. And we're taxing at an 84.3% of the tax levy limit. FY26 tax levy. As I mentioned, we're utilizing 100% of the Prop 2.5, which is the 1.4 million, estimating new growth at $1 million. We're taxing at 84.3% of the total tax levy, which would mean that 15.7 of the levy is not being used. There is a 1-year reprieve on a 1/10 tax levy earmark for 5-year capital, and that was redirected into the operating budget. And again, as I mentioned, there is no consideration on the use of the 9.3 million of the excess levy. And this budget that's being recommended maintains the current FY25 excess levy. This chart just shows the new growth from FY21 to FY25, with a 5-year average of just over $740,000. The next category of revenue is the state aid cherry sheet. We're using the governor's proposal for FY26, which is a $297,000 increase. Now, Auburn's state aid 5-year average is $772,000. So as you can see, unfortunately, we're below the average by $475,000. The increase for the current fiscal year that we're in, fiscal 25, is $337,000. Now, this is going to result in a greater dependency on local revenues and taxation because we're not receiving as much in the cherry sheet aid as we have in the past. And we do expect some volatility in these amounts for the next several years. Now, this graph shows the cherry sheet history for the last 10 years from fiscal 16 to fiscal 25. Next category that we'll talk about is FY26 local receipts. The estimates are up 6.96% over FY25, which is an increase of $885,000. Now, the interest income is up significantly due to a high return on investment on the town, but any downturn in the rates will result in a lower return on investment. There's also an increase built into the budget for motor vehicle excise, which is based upon the actual amounts from fiscal year 24 that the town received. There's an increase of $150,000 in hotel motel, again, based upon FY24 actuals. And when we budget closer to actuals and we budget conservatively, this may result in a reduction of free cash due to those estimates that are closer to the actuals. This next slide shows the detail of the local receipts, which total for fiscal 26, 13.6 million. Some of the categories that you're probably more familiar with, we have the motor vehicle excise taxes in here. As I mentioned, we have the investment income and fees revenue Now, the category FY 2026 available funds, which is down 40.21% or 1.8 million. Now, the reductions are primarily made up of one-time uses of free cash from the fall town meeting, some warrant articles, using 135,000 of free cash for CIP, and some other reductions too. We were using sewer retained earnings of 329,000. There's a reduction of 490,000 in ambulance receipts that was being provided for the cost of purchasing an ambulance of 400,000 in fiscal '25. And again, some reductions on the Packagug, the golf course, 180,000. We were using retained earnings for CIP. We don't have any requests for '26. The same with cable. We used 40,000. In FY '25, no request in '26. And in the '26 budget, there is a one-time use of $50,000 that we're receiving from Eastland Partners for the impact fees to offset public safety and DDIS costs. So here are the details of what makes up the available fund category. What you'll see in here, some of the things we talked about, ambulance revenue, some of the free cash, and we do have down the bottom the Eastland impact fees. So in total for fiscal year '26, total revenue sources, $86,228,639, which is an increase of $1,770,000 over the current fiscal year of '25. And this is a graph, a different depiction of the FY '26 revenue breakdown of the 86 million, the biggest piece being tax levy, 50 million. And you can see the cherry sheet aid makes up 21 million, the local receipts, 21%, local receipts, 15%, and then the smaller categories. Just wanted to point out in the FY '26, there are a few recommended new positions. One police patrol that's going to start as of 1/1 of '26, 2 firefighter paramedics starting as of 1/1 of '26, an assistant golf course superintendent, but that's in the enterprise fund, so that will be supported by those fees, a reference librarian, which is being budgeted for 26 weeks, and an assistant position in the treasurer collector's office, which is being budgeted for 2/3 of the fiscal year. Just a few things to point out on the FY 2026 fixed costs. Just so that you know, there is a recommendation for a sum of money in the salary wage reserve for contracts to be negotiated. There are several union contracts that are up for negotiation, so that is where there was calculated a sum of money to put to cover the amount that will be granted for the increases. Now, this budget meets the contractual obligations for school contracts. It adds 35,000 to the DPW fleet to meet cost escalation for vehicle supplies. It increases fire overtime by 165,000. The Bay Path assessment for FY '26 is projected to be up by 4.28% or 74,000. There was no change in the Bay Path school enrollment. It still remains at 131 students. The Norfolk Aggie is funded with estimated increases for tuition and transportation, and the FY '26 budget meets the solid waste collection and disposal costs. A few highlights on the employee benefits. The pension and benefits are up 6.79%, or just under $1 million. The Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment is up 11.7%. And we're going to take advantage of the discount that they offer of $99,000 if we pay the assessment by 7/1 of '25. The group health increases are estimated to be in the vicinity of 10%. And the town is considering mitigating portion of premium increases by offering a couple of premium holidays during fiscal '26. And we're going to leverage our trust equity balance of $11 million to offset some of the increase. Now, for discretionary spending, the town operating budgets are very lean. There isn't much in the way of discretionary line items, but the budget does address professional development and certifications to advance and position our employees for succession planning. We feel that is very important. Just a couple of other quick notable items. Again, as they had mentioned, the union wages are level funded for 26 using 25 rates. However, we have set an amount of money aside in the salary reserve for when those are settled. The FY25 appropriation, just a couple of things that you might note within your budgets in the book, is that the FY25 appropriation on the departmental budget sheets reflects the town meeting votes. The Finance Committee transfers and the 1% salary increases are not included. And one other notable item for Highway and Fleet. There were several employees that were moved from Highway and Sewer that created the new Fleet division, so you may see some increases in one budget and decreases in another. So as a summary for total appropriations, $86,228,447, which is an increase of $1,770,048 over FY25. Again, here you can kind of see we broke down the appropriations for FY26 into the biggest category is education. We have employee benefits at 18.12, public safety, and then as you can see as it goes around the different percentages for public works and the other departments of the town. So this right here is the budget summary by department for the town. Goes into the second page, which also picks up the capital budget is included in here for a total of the 86.228 million. And this is the final summary. So the expense and revenue summary, the revenues 86,228,639.35, expenses 86,228,447.15, which gives us an unobligated balance of 192.20, and it gives us a balanced budget for fiscal year 26. So thank you very much for letting me present this to you this evening. And if you have any questions, anything that you would like to ask about any of the departmental budgets, anything in those financial articles, please feel free to ask us. And we also have the department heads here for any specific budget questions.
Is there any questions in regards to the town side of the 2026 budget? Please, sir, can you come forward?
Good evening, Alan Rafferty. I just thought I'd get up and break the ice. I have a question. We recently had an audit done, and the auditor reported to the Board of Selectmen recently. And in it, he expressed the opinion that the free cash was huge. It was a huge amount, and I think he says it was almost double what other towns usually have. And he says it's great for bond ratings, because when banks see that you have all that reserve money, they feel you can meet your financial obligations, and so they give you a good interest rate. But here's my question, if someone can answer that. It would seem to indicate to me that if the free cash is that high, that you're overtaxing the residents. Am I correct in that assumption?
Well, the free cash has been building up over time. So as we get it certified, we can only, according to our policies, we can only use a certain amount of the free cash. And then the balance rolls into the next year's amount to be certified. So that's basically how it's built up over the years. And the best use of the free cash is for the capital and one-time uses. And what you'll see in the budget book too is that there's a recommendation to use some of the free cash towards the project, say for the fire station. The free cash is generally the difference between the budgeted revenues, budget expenses, and then what was actually spent and taken in. So like this year when we said that or last year when we had some really good returns on investment, that cannot, isn't necessarily projected that that will happen. So on that side, that's a positive revenue. So that wouldn't necessarily mean that the residents were overtaxed.
I could do a follow-up question. Around 10 years ago, I saw the meeting where the auditor came in and gave a report. This was around 10 years ago. And at that time, he said the same thing. He says, your free cash is very, very high. He says it's remarkable. So it seemed to indicate that we continue to have free cash in large amounts over the years. It didn't build up. It's apparently remained double for over the last 10 years. So it would seem that you're not reducing taxation on the residents. You're just kind of letting it roll.
If I may speak to that, there has been a discussion regarding our free cash more than once at both Finance Committee meeting and our Board of Selectmen meetings in regards to the balance that's in our free cash. And yes, it does help our bond rating, but when it comes to taxation, it is something that the board is very concerned about. And it is the reason why they recently approved transferring $8 million from free cash, with town meeting approval, of course, to help build a new fire station. So that's $8 million that would not need to be brought out for any type of debt service, and it's taxation that won't be then brought onto our residents. So we are aware of it, and thank you very much. But it's also a way to get some things done that we need to get done and not always go back to our taxpayers to continually pay more. But thank you for the question. Does anyone else have any questions? Please come forward.
My name is Kim Watts, and I've been a resident for 8 years. This is the first town meeting I've attended, or pre-town meeting. And I would just like to make a comment. It's not exactly a question, but I think that the fund should be labeled reserves or reserve cash instead of free cash, because I don't think it sends the right kind of message. And I personally am very frugal and am what I define as house poor, and I'm always looking for ways to save. But I want to put one principle out that I think we should all consider, and that is you pay no matter what you do. The question is, are we paying appropriately for the right thing at the right time? And I would like to hear any discussion going forward to be under those kind of terms, rather than, I don't want to pay, nobody wants to pay. I don't want to pay. But I want what's good and right for my family and for the town. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. The term free cash is actually a generally accepted accounting practice term in municipal government, but I do understand your point, because free cash is not free. Free cash is derived from your taxes that you've paid over the last, how long you've lived here in Auburn. So I definitely recognize that. I will speak to our finance team about changing the name as it relates to free cash when it comes to these types of presentations, so that it's more understandable, because it isn't free. The reason we do use it, again, is because that's the appropriate language, but I really appreciate your comments. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
Hi, Mike Marshall. I know a couple years ago, Ed had sort of had an answer to this, and I don't know if we have like updated numbers, but I'm curious how our excess levy compares to surrounding communities. I know that there's a lot of conversation about, the tax level and people being concerned that we're taxing too much. My understanding is that a lot of surrounding communities tax the full 2.5% increase consistently year over year. Auburn hasn't. We have a 9 million excess levy this year, and over the course of Ed always put the number out, and I'm sure it's probably in one of the presentations, but over the last 10, 15 years, I know that administration has saved the town taxpayers literally tens of millions of dollars. So if there are updated numbers or even just general numbers, I'd love to sort of get your stance on that because, like you said, nobody wants to pay taxes, but in my admittedly limited experience in town, my impression has been that we are not taxing at the rate that we could be. We're not taxing consistent with the rates that other towns are taxing at. And on top of all that, we have a high level of services that the residents get to enjoy. And so I'm just love to hear your position on it.
Thank you. That's a great comment. Unused tax levy is basically an amount that's derived each year that we don't tax up to 2.5%. So in previous administrations and different economies, Auburn has been very lucky to have very sound financial practices, very tight financial policies, and have been able to save $9 million, a little over $9 million in what you would call unused tax levy. That equates to millions and millions when it comes to what residents would have had to pay if they did pay at the 2.5%. I don't have the dollar amount, and I can get that because that's a really good point. But we're not saying that, and I'm sure you're not bringing it up to just say, we're better than everyone else. We are in some ways, but no one else I know has an unused tax levy of this amount, and that goes to the credit of previous administrations. But it's also concerning because now we do have to go to 2.5%, and it just happens to be my first interim year that we're going to 2.5%, so that's great too. But it's just concerning in that we need to remain fiscally prudent. We don't want to tap into the unused tax levy and go in front of you in town meeting and say, please let us borrow some of that so that we can meet our budget. We're trying to look at contracts and look at other areas where we can reduce expenses and even share positions and different things that my management team and I have already discussed, because we do not want to go back and tax Auburn residents any more than we have to. So it's a great point. I appreciate it. I will get the dollar amount because I know it's pretty high up there. And I'm proud to say that that's been done in Auburn, and it has saved the taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. You don't necessarily feel it, but it's accurate. It does, unfortunately, has been a little bit of a detriment when working with unions, and I'm just being honest, because they feel like there's money in a bank account because we have this unused tax levy that the unions want. Well, no, it's actually tax that we'd have to tax our residents in order to get the money, and that's not someplace we want to go. So that's just, thank you. Anyone else have any other questions? Please.
Ken Frost. This has got to do with, I don't have bifocals in these, so I have to take my glasses off. The treasurer collector budget, it's on page 22. Was it 511143? Assistant treasurer collector. And it goes up to like $116,138. That's one person, considering the treasurer collector only gets 95,000. Is that correct?
Actually, in the budget presentation, I had mentioned that there was a new position that was being budgeted for 2/3 of the fiscal year '26.
Yep.
So actually, that is for 2 assistants in the office.
So that's for 2 people?
Yes, that's for 2.
Can I continue? No,
Sure.
Of course.
I have something on page 39 that I noticed. This is up for the recreation. We have a recreation director with no money. And we have money from supplies. Is that the recreation director in some other place now?
So, so there's a footnote.
I'm sorry, I think I'll help Joanna out, and, so what's happening here is that the recreation director's salary for fiscal year '26 is actually going to be charged to the recreational revolving account, and that's the account where fees for programs go into there, so we can pay some of the part-time salaries from there. So we're not removing a position or a person or anything.
And my last question will be, is the Camp Gleason is being reimbursed with retail earnings from cable? Oh, it's in my hand.
So, are you talking about the warrant article?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, okay. So yes, we are going for a transfer from non-tax levy funding in our cable account to help supplement the cost of the ACTV expenses associated with all the office for that department and all the technology that's needed at Camp Gleason. Because we're at a point now where, I don't know if anyone was able to go through the tour, but we're at a point now where we're finishing up a lot of the building, and we need to get the technology in place so that we can actually have a public meeting there.
so how much is in the retained earnings for that account, if you can take 200 some odd thousand out?
I do believe it's over 400,000. Chris, do you have it off the top of your head? I'm sorry, sir, did you hear that? It was over 400,000.
Good, thank you.
No problem. Thank you for your questions. Anyone else have any questions? Please, sir.
Yeah, just a quick statement and then a question. You said that in the budget, money has been set aside for union contracts that have yet to be negotiated.
That is correct.
And I was just wondering how smart it was to let that information out to the union negotiators, that you have this amount of money set aside. It just seems to me that you're tipping your hat in the negotiations, but maybe you have to do it this way, but I mean, that's what a lot of times why you go into executive session, is you don't want to give away what your strategy is in negotiations, but communicating to the unions that you've got this money set aside, I just don't think it's a good idea. So that's my statement. You don't have to answer that, but my question is, Bay Path assessment is up 5%, but our enrollment is flat. Could you explain why that has happened?
So some of that has to do with the increase in the the net school spending that we have to, in order to give to Bay Path. And I know I'm not using exactly the correct terminology, but the state comes up with like a foundation budget that we have to give them, and there are increases that are built into there as well. So that's why even though the enrollment is flat, the budget is still slightly increasing.
And if I may, to respond to your first question, is you make a good point, except for the fact that the money is put in with other money, so that there is no dollar amount that the unions can actually specify is earmarked for them. And we have 9 unions, so in order for them to try to figure that out or back into it would be extremely difficult. If they did, I'd really be impressed. But it's a good point. Unfortunately, they know every year this is nothing new for them. Union presidents and the people that I negotiate with, and I've always negotiated with, they know we put aside the money. It would be fiscally irresponsible to not anticipate that we're going to settle with unions that are due to expire at the end of June. But thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So we're going to invite Dr. Beth Chamberlain up to do her school department presentation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Beth Chamberlain. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Auburn. I'm also here with Jen Stanek, my business manager. She'll talk in just a moment. So we'll give you an overview of our budget preparation process and what went into it this year. We always start with our mission, our vision, and our commitment, knowing that we need to serve all of our kids all of the time. Our strategic plan has focus areas in teaching and learning, health, wellness, and safety, and community partnerships. This has been our plan for the last 3 years. We'll continue again through this school year to guide the decisions that we make related to the budget. The school committee priorities include primarily maintaining our class size, focusing on anti-bullying initiatives, training and resources, maintaining positions that focus on the social and emotional health of our kids, ensuring that our contractual obligations are met, and that we respect the ongoing financial support we get from all of you, because we have been very fortunate to receive the support that we have over those many years from the town of Auburn. So we've adjusted our staffing levels to meet the financial needs of the town. So we started our budget at 4.7%. You're going to see that that's not where we landed. We have tried to, by doing so, maintain our class sizes as recommended. But this year, we will have some cuts to positions for specifically, which will impact us, but we're going to do our best to make it work given the financial situation. We have a science position at Auburn High School, whom she'll be out on leave. We are not filling that position. We have an elementary position. A teacher resigned. We are not filling that position. And we have 2 placeholder positions, another one elementary, again, we are not filling, and one at the middle school. We're still kind of waiting to determine what actual positions those will be to minimize the impact it has on our class size and on our students. We did have to add 2 new positions. Both of these are special education related to meet the IEP requirements of some students. So we're adding a special education teacher at Swanson Road and a district-wide speech and language pathologist. We've used our October first enrollment to estimate what our students will be. Our Chapter 70 money increased by only 1%, which is a small amount. In the past, we would see increases of 3% and 4%. That did not happen this year. So that's the money we get from the state. We've reimbursed estimated our reimbursement for Circuit Breaker. Circuit Breaker is money we receive back for special education students and their needs. So we get reimbursed for some of that. We estimate that conservatively. We also get a Medicaid reimbursement, likewise, for special education students to be $160,000, again, conservatively, to make sure that's the actual reimbursement that we get. And we did have newly arrived students who lived at a shelter here in town, and we did get reimbursement from them. So there's $257,916 in offsets from reimbursements that we received for those students. We level funded our grant monies. Our grant monies have stayed very stable over the last several years. So this would be the 240 grant, which is again supporting of special education students. Our Title I grant, which is to provide remediation for students who are low income, and our Title IIA grant to offset the operating budget. We've level funded our supplies. We have not increased anywhere related to that. We have increased our bus fee this year, which is the first time in quite some time, by $25. So that gives us an additional $20,000 in offset. We've always been able to use $100,000. This year it'll be $120,000. We have completely maximized the use of offsets from revolving accounts. So building rental, satellite and Galaxy, those are our before and after school programs. We've used those to the maximum we can. Preschool, music, fine arts, athletic, and tuition accounts. So we've done all we can to use that. We've budgeted for 74 school choice spots for which we'll receive $5,000 a student. So those are students from other towns. We are very careful about where we accept students and what grade we accept them into to make sure that it's not impacting our overall enrollment. We did go out to bid this year for our transportation, which was a little disconcerting to say the least. It came back with a 9% increase, and Mrs. Stanek was able to negotiate that down to 8%. So we were appreciative of that, as many districts around the state have seen double-digit increases in transportation costs. We've accounted for a 5% increase in special education private school tuitions. So if we send students out because their needs require that, so we've anticipated a 5% increase there. Our contractual obligations for staff, we have a number of unions and bargaining units. And our oil pricing, electricity, and natural gas has stayed steady because we've been in a contract in collaboration with the town for those. We continue to use solar credits from middle school and high school along with the project in Rutland. So in total, we have offsets in the amount of $4,017,685.93. The shelter in town will be closing by August 31st of this school year. At the high point, we had 54 students enrolled from the shelter. Right now, we have about 25. So that is gradually decreasing. We are anticipating an increase in student enrollment due to Topograph. That's the new housing development up off of Albert Street. It's a terrible name. If you ask me, I can never remember it, but that's what it's called. Right now, we have 19 students enrolled from there. I think when it was proposed, they said we could potentially see 69, but as of right now, with I think 4 buildings open, we have 19. This year, we are accounting for 2 residential placements for students. A residential placement is very expensive. One student moved in from out of state who had already been placed in a residential placement, and because they moved to Auburn, they became our responsibility. And we have 1 student who will be outplaced this year. So our total budget is $32,607,276. It's a $1.2 million increase over the FY25 budget. Again, we've used over $4 million in offsets to offset that number, and this equates to a 3.81% increase. And again, we have done the best we can. We will feel the impact from the loss of the positions, but we know that we have to do our part for the town as well, and we feel like we can make that work. We do have a few warrant articles that Mrs. Stanek's going to talk to you about.
Good evening, I'm Jennifer Stanek. I am the business manager for the Auburn Public Schools. The warrant articles that we have presented are typical articles that we do each year. Article 14 is for our Medicaid receipts for $160,000, and these fund supplies and medical, therapeutic, and educational services for significantly disabled special needs students for tuition and transportation to and from outside placements and within the district for special needs students. The Medicaid funds are actually reimbursed after the fact, so we have already spent these funds. These monies have gone. The monies come back into the general fund, and we are respectfully requesting your approval of this article. Article 15 is the interest for the trust fund with the Pappas Trust, and we utilize these funds in order to offset the necessary costs at Auburn High School in support of the community's use of the gymnasium. So we request your approval of this article. Article 16 is also a reimbursement, and this is our McKinney-Vento receipts, which are for homeless transportation. And this is for transporting homeless students either to their home district, and we cost share with some districts 50%, or paying another district to transport students who were previously attending Auburn prior to becoming homeless. And they may have temporary housing, and we respectfully request your approval of this article. And Article 17 is the foster care transportation receipts. Again, a reimbursement in which we have already put forth those funds. And when students are placed in foster care, the school of origin is the one that will be responsible, as they don't want to disrupt those students any further. So we do have to provide the transportation to their school of origin. And lastly, we have our fiscal year 2026 capital improvement plan. Most of the plan is based on HVAC upgrades and air purification within the district buildings, as well as our iPad initiative, which happens each year for our students. And then we are in desperate need of an updated math program, and that has the funding there as well.
So again, I just want to say we are so thankful to the Auburn community. You've been nothing but generous and supportive, and we appreciate that. So we'll welcome any questions you may have at this time related to any of those topics.
Anyone have any questions? Sure. Please come up.
Jan El Said. I just have a future question rather than maybe anything you reported. Just in the news, the Medicaid kind of issue coming up and other budget cuts that may or may not affect Massachusetts or the country. How do you manage that? Or I also wondered about the town, I guess, but I know schools are probably going to be impacted largely, and I'm not sure you can do anything, but I thought I'd ask the question.
We, like every other community in Massachusetts, and I think across the country, are asking that same question. We don't know what that means. If our Medicaid receipts were cut, that would have a detrimental impact on our children. There has been some talk that our special education, the 240 grant funding and Title I funding could potentially be taken away as well. Just that grant funding is nearly $1 million. It would be devastating to our school district if that happens. I was actually at Select Board last evening letting them know about that there was a form that was asked to be signed by each state saying that we complied with Title VI. Title VI is an anti-discrimination law. Of course, we abide by that. We have to abide by that for any kind of federal funding, and because we're a public school district. But what was also put on there was a comment about diversity, equity, inclusion, and if there was anything associated with diversity, equity, inclusion that was tied to federal funds, that those funds could be revoked. Massachusetts did not sign this form, but sent a letter back to Washington, D.C. to say that we comply with Title VI, which we do and we are required to. That's been a longstanding law since 1962. What will happen from the fact that we didn't sign that, along with many other states that did not sign the form, sent a letter back, what that means, I don't know. And it's hard to know if it could be, we could be partially cut, if it could all be cut. But I can't imagine that we're going to hurt our children that way. In my heart, I just can't imagine that anyone would hurt children, because it would hurt children. So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer. I don't have a crystal ball, but it is a very precarious time in education and across the state for all kinds of municipal things. It is very scary.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
So we're going to move on to Article 12 and 13, and these are two votes that are for the proposed fire station located at 10 Prospect Street. Article 12 is a vote to appropriate $8 million from free cash for the financing of the new fire headquarters. This would be subject to a vote by the Board of Selectmen to place a debt exclusion question on the May 20th annual town election ballot. Article 13 is a vote for the town meeting to authorize the borrowing of the balance of 23 million for the same purpose, the construction of the new fire station headquarters at 10 Prospect Street. As you know, the question is already on the ballot for May 20th, 2015. We had to give the language to the printer, and we had to print the ballots because the timeline from the town meeting and the election were too close. So I just want to explain that. So it is on the ballot. If you have a ballot that was brought to your house, say you're voting from home, then you're going to see the question. We've had a lot of questions to the town clerk's office and also my office. And please know that even though the question is on the ballot, it requires the vote of town meeting. Town meeting needs to approve it, and so does, we need to pass both for it to actually work. It can't be one or the other. So I just want you to know it is on the ballot, even though it hasn't been voted yet. It's because we had to get the language out. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know. I'll be happy to explain it further. But the Chief Coleman is here to explain the plans for the proposed fire station.
Thank you to the town manager. I'm gonna spare everybody the presentation because next Tuesday, Tecton, our architectural firm, and our owner's project manager will be in attendance at town meeting to do about a 10-minute presentation. But there are two things that I just wanted to cover tonight, just as far as the funding, and then just to show, in case you haven't seen it, just a depiction of the exterior of the building. I want to first start out by thanking the town meeting members, because without you, we wouldn't be to the point where we are today. This has been a long time. This has been many years. We're starting to see a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel that I hope we get to. But without your support for conceptual designs and OPM services, and ultimately the purchase of the 10 Prospect Street property, we wouldn't even be to this stage today. So town meeting has been very supportive up to this point. We're very appreciative of that. I want to recognize Mr. Mark Imsey, who is here in the audience. Mark is the chair of the Fire Station Building Committee. That is a 12-member committee of Auburn residents that have been working extremely hard since the later part of 2024 in very close concert with our architectural firm and the OPM to really whittle down the design, not only the interior design, but the exterior design of the building. We've really, we kind of came in with a conceptual idea. We came in with what's called a program or a programmatic approach from the architect in terms of what does the operation look like today, kind of keeping a little bit of the future in mind. What are the needs of the building? And we start out with a rough square footage. The committee has worked really hard with the architect. We've trimmed about 6,400 square feet off of the original program, which results in millions of dollars in savings. Right now, this project is being estimated at a per square foot construction cost at $800. Just by way of comparison, and the architect will talk about this a little more at town meeting, but in 2019, it was $400. So the price per square foot in construction has doubled since 2019. But within the last couple of years, we were seeing some square footage prices anywhere between $900 and $1,000. So we are seeing the construction costs come down a little bit, and that is good news for us in this project. So Article 12, there's two parts to the vote. Article 12 first asks the town meeting to authorize the use of $8 million from the free cash reserves as a direct offset to the borrowing of this project. So let me just give me 1 sec. Let me just scan down a little quickly here. I just want to show you a slide on the project, the estimated project cost. So the actual construction costs for the project are estimated at $24,800,000. On top of that, there's about $5.2 million in project development costs. That's owner project manager, that's architect, that's all sort of the behind the scenes stuff outside of construction. We are carrying a $1 million contingency in the event that there is an increase in tariff. It does not mean that we have to use it. But again, with the unpredictability of sort of what is going on right now, we feel that it's responsible to at least carry a contingency to do that. So that puts the total project cost at $31 million. Now, when we started this project and we hired the OPM and the architect and the building committee got together, we were thinking that this project was going to come in at 30 million. It's at 31 because of the $1 million tariff contingency. But we knew that we were going to be somewhere in the $30 million ballpark. And what that would have translated to for an annual increase to our residents is somewhere around $350 to $360 annually. And, that was a number that, that was still a little bit of a scary number in these times. And through some conversations and through some thinking with the building committee, the question was asked about the use of our free cash reserves. And as it was, talked about earlier, the reason that we have healthy free cash reserves is because the town does budget very conservatively year to year. And when we budget conservatively and then the market strikes or things come under what we anticipated, that is how those reserves are built up over time, which makes us financially healthy. In this particular case, we had 18 million. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but we had 18 million, maybe close to 19 million in the free cash reserves. And the committee approached both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee separately and gauged the interest on using $8 million from those reserves as a one-time use to offset the tax impact to the resident. And both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee had some very healthy discussion on it. They ultimately both boards voted unanimously to support that recommendation to town meeting, which ultimately, when you look down to the bottom here, would bring the borrowing request for this project to $23 million, which would reduce the median household annual tax impact on a residential property of $394,800. So if you own a home that's valued at $394,800, the annual impact would be reduced from that $350,000, $360,000 down to $186.93 annually. So if you break that out into quarters, it's an impact of $46.73 per quarter. So this is just one example of the benefits of having those reserves there. So we don't have to ask the taxpayers to carry a burden over a 20-year debt period for an additional $8 million. So Article 12 is asking for town meeting to approve the financial strategy of using the $8 million from reserve. And then Article 13 is authorizing the town to actually have the question on the ballot, and providing that it is successful at the ballot box on May 20th, then your vote, a successful vote on Article 13, would allow the town to move forward to actually move into the next phase of design to actually construct the building. So it's a two-part process, but we feel that the use of the $8 million, like I said, both the Finance Committee and the board, we think that's a great use for the $8 million. And the committee, myself, I know everybody involved, we were very happy to see an increase of under $200 on the median house. We think that it makes this very important project much more palatable for the community. So that's what I'll share with you today. I'll certainly answer any questions if somebody has one, but there will be about a 10-minute presentation in a little more detail from our architect and our OPM on May 6th. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Yes.
My name is Russell Talisman, and the only question I have really, I am going to speak, I am in favor of this firehouse, but on the $31 million, is that a guesstimate from the architect design, or is that really what a contractor is going to build it for?
I'm going I'm going to give you all a sneak peek, and I'm going to show you one more slide. And that's a great question, Mr. Talmadge. Thank you for it. So the anticipated 30 million, because remember the 1 million we're carrying just as a contingency for steel. So the estimated project cost is derived by our OPM that is based on current data today, basically backing into a number on what current construction costs are. It's largely based on the current value of $800 a square foot that we're seeing, across the market. But things over the last 100 days have changed in terms of construction. And in some respects, it's changed, hopefully, in our benefit. So this is one of the other slides that the architect will talk a little bit about to the full town meeting on May 6th. But what we're seeing now is, with the fear of tariffs and with the fear of what's going on in the economy, contractors are getting very hungry. They're sharpening their pencils, and they're trying to secure work for the next 2 to 3 years. So what we've seen just over the last several months locally is the Charlton Fire Department had a substation that was estimated at 19 million. It came in 2 million under budget. The Southbridge Fire Department, their town council just put the final stamp of approval last night on a $24 million construction project that they received bids. This number is wrong. It's 24 and so it's 24 and then it's 19 and some change, but it's a delta of $4,000. Their project came 4 million. Their project came in $4 million under budget for construction. The Northborough Fire Headquarters was estimated at 33.4. They just opened a low bid for 26.9, a $6.5 million savings. And the Munson Fire Department just recently did a police renovation that there was a $1.5 million in savings. And these are all recent, just within the last few months. Now, what we're hoping is that we're sort of in that bubble. And there's another slide that I'll let the architect show on May 6th, but there are various points where and I don't want to use the word recession because we're not in a recession, but when you're looking at a construction escalation chart that essentially does this, there are 3 areas over the last 25 years where that chart sort of goes like this and it flattens out a little bit. It was on 9/11, it was in 2009 during the recession, and it was during COVID. And we're seeing, and what the market is showing, is that we're seeing a very similar flattening of construction with the uncertainties in the national economy and tariffs and all of that now. And we're seeing it in what the construction numbers are coming in on recent bids. So we're on that bubble, and we're in the bubble. So our hope is that if this project passes on May 20th, we will be in conversations with our architect and see if we can somehow shorten the design time frame from 10 months to maybe a 6-month period, so we can go out to bid quicker and hopefully ride this wave and see a construction estimate come in at lower than what we anticipated. So the $30 million estimate, our OPM assures us that we're not under budgeting that. But if for some reason it took a turn and it did go back to $1,000 a square foot, my plan, the committee's plan, it's been the plan from the very beginning. Our expectation is not to come back to the voters and say we need more money. At that point, we're going to have to figure out what we need to trim. I hope that does not happen, because I think the committee has done an outstanding job in working a very good program. And I think that we have found that balance where we will meet the needs of today, and we have some potential future growth in 30 years, 40 years. I would be concerned if we had to cut any more today. I'd be concerned that we're sort of going, kind of in the wrong direction. But the expectation is that we wouldn't come back to the voters for more money. If things went the other direction, we'd be looking to pull back. But I think the 30 million is a sound estimate based on what's going on in the construction field right now. But we're hoping to take advantage of this kind of current situation, and hopefully we can get some bids. That would be great if we could get some bids, $1 million, $2 million under budget. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I certainly think it's probably time that a new fire department building was built. The last one we had, the student, I think it was Bay Path, the Bay Path kids came in and they put on a second floor, and our forefathers, the earlier designed the police building and the fire department with flat roofs. And I talked to a man who was on that committee for the express purpose of being able to expand. So they were really thinking ahead. I certainly wasn't in favor of the safety building idea because the police department building is only 20 years old. So I just think that it was poor planning. But I just have one question. I just have a problem with the way it's going about. Maybe you had to go about it this way, but you bought the land for the fire station, Chuck's Steakhouse, and you've torn down the building. It's been flattened already, almost like you feel like it's a for sure project that you're going to get this passed. But what happens if the voters vote this down? And I know you're probably going to come back a second time because that's what happened in Charlton. You came back a second time. But what happens when you come back? What do we do with that piece of property that's worth $5.5 million, or what we paid $5.5 million for?
Thank you very much for your question. Anybody that knows me or has talked to me, I had a conversation with Mr. Carpenter today, and he can come up here and he can validate what I'm about to say. Anybody that thinks that I am sure that this project is going to pass is very uninformed. I'll be honest with you, I'm nervous about whether or not this is going to pass. I do not think that this is a guarantee in any way, shape, or form, and I won't be, I don't think I'm going to sleep until after May 20th when the polls close and the votes are counted. But you bring up a good question, Mr. Rafferty, and it goes back to some conversations that the town has really been having over the past 6 years, even when we were exploring the public safety building project. For anybody that has been paying close attention to this project, you will know that the original building feasibility group that was formed prior to COVID in 2019, they were charged with evaluating the existing public safety facilities, and they were charged with trying to find a location to site a public safety building or whatever we were going to do. And it took them almost 5 years to do that with no result. Auburn is land poor. We do not own property. The largest properties that we own are by way of parks and recreation. Any parcels that we own that could be a potential future use for something do not amount to really any sort of acreage. So it's a question that is often asked, and we talked about it back in 2024 when we purchased the 10 Prospect Street property. We said, listen, we hope that town meeting supports a future fire station, and we hope that the town supports a future fire station. But regardless of whether or not that happens, the purchase of that property and the demolition of that building is an investment to the town of Auburn. Because, I hope a fire station passes. But if it doesn't, in my opinion, probably one of the biggest mistakes that the town could make is to immediately turn around and try to offload that parcel to recoup our money. Because this problem is not going away. The West Street Fire Station problem is not going away. And we are going to be faced someday with this issue, whether it's this May 20th or next May or the May after that. And if we were to sell the property, we're right back to where we were in 2019 saying, where are we going to put it? The other advantage, I'm blowing what I said I wasn't going to do tonight, and I'm showing you extra slides. But everybody has seen this rendition. Everybody's seen this. This is the proposed location. This is Prospect Street. This is Route 20. you will see this little green space area to the left that we've carved out for the future expansion of something. Whether in 20 years that becomes a police station, whether it becomes a school administration building, whether it becomes administrative offices for planning, or whatever it may be. The advantage of the town investing in this property not only gives us the opportunity to construct a new fire headquarters that's desperately needed, but it gives the town some future planning and some wiggle room to be able to do something else. And right now, that is not an opportunity that we have. So I would just use caution, cautiously to the town meeting that if for some reason this project doesn't pass, not to abandon the plan, because we still have to march forward and we have to do something. So I appreciate your comment and the question. Any additional questions? Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much for all of the support that you've provided on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So we will move along to Articles 18 through 21. Article 18 is an amendment to the Auburn zoning bylaws. Dr. Adam Menard will just provide a brief description of what this article does.
If you don't mind, I'll tackle all of them at
Go ahead.
once. So there's 4 zoning articles being proposed this spring. Each of the articles has been reviewed by the Zoning Bylaw Review Committee, and they have voted to send those articles to the town meeting. The planning board also had a public hearing about a month ago on each of these articles, and they recommended unanimously to that town meeting adopt all 4 changes. The first is changes to the accessory dwelling units. Again, the Bylaw Review Committee has worked for most of the past year on this. This change partly stems from a change to state law that pretty much outdates our existing bylaw. The change will eliminate the need for a special permit, removes the need for a deed restriction, and removes the owner of the property live at the property. So it greatly frees up who can live and build an accessory apartment. The Article 19 is the multifamily portion, 9.36. A lot of this language is dated, and it does not comply with the MBTA communities. So this is trying to clean up the bylaw, remove some old language, some contradictory language. The reduced frontage lot is to try to create some infill development of single-family homes, allowing a reduction of the amount of frontage needed up to 25% reduction to a particular lot. This would need a special permit with the planning board. And the last one, Article 21, will change how the height of a building is measured. Currently, the height of a building is measured to the tallest ceiling. So in your typical single-family home, the attic floor would be the tallest point, not the peak. This change will measure it to the peak of the roof. So it just tweaks how the height of a building is measured. If there's any questions, be happy to listen.
Any questions? Sure, come on up.
Yeah, I reviewed these zoning changes, and I don't know who's here to answer my question. It's probably not fair to put it on Bob Tatro, who's the Zoning Board of Appeals. These things were, and although they voted to approve them, they were concocted by the Zoning Bylaw Review Committee. So I don't know if there's anyone here who will address my questions. Unless you've been under a rock for the past few months, then you realize we have some Chapter 40B projects coming into town. Pre-Chapter 40B and some 40B, to the point where we're going to overshoot our state mandated 10% affordable housing requirement. We're going to shoot to 20% potentially. So there's a lot of development coming. And you don't have to have a high IQ to realize how that's going to impact all the town departments. They're going to need taxes, folks. And so, Mr. Tatro, through the chair, Mr. Tatro has a warrant article where he wants to do a building moratorium. I completely support that. That's a great idea. If we can get away with it. It would appear that legally we may not have a good a leg to stand on, but I think we should try, because otherwise the town is going to change. But the problem I have with these zoning changes, not all of them, but some of them are basically making it easier to build more homes. Okay, reducing frontage, allowing more single-family homes to come in, and Chapter 40B invasion, I would be in favor of that because we need to create housing. But Auburn is being stormed with developers, and these changes to the zoning are going to make it easier to build even more. So it would seem to me that since you're anticipating all these developments to coming in, that you wouldn't make it easier to build even more with these changes. So if anyone wants to address that, fine, but I would recommend to town meeting members, I would not approve these, most of these zoning changes. Some of them are okay, they're okay, but the other ones, I just not in favor of it.
I'll try to address your comments. So none of these zoning changes will impact 40B development. 40B kind of bypasses the zoning bylaw in the way it's set up by the state. So none of these changes would directly affect 40B. The accessory dwelling unit change, that's coming from state law. Regardless of if we change or not, the state has new guidance. We have to follow that guidance. This just tries to make sure we have some oversight over accessory dwelling units, limiting them to single-family homes, limiting them in size, and limiting them in the size of the bedrooms to one bedroom. So try to retain some control and not just going through completely what the state says. Same with the multifamily language being strucken, trying to comply with the MBTA communities law, which we have to comply with. There is potentially grant funding that is tied to that we would not be able to access without that change, without complying. The reduced frontage is just for single-family homes. It's not for multifamilies. And the height of the building will actually reduce the size of buildings that are allowed. So that will restrict some form of development in that sense. So.
Mr. Tatro, did you want to add anything?
Good evening, Robert Tatro, 4 Ridgewood Drive. So I did not have anything to do with these particular items, but I can help with my experience of them and kind of explain them off a little bit. As Dr. Menard mentioned, a lot of these are because of the state regulations are changing. Our governor and her cabinet decided that they were going to make accessory dwelling units a standardized size and what they call a by right situation. So now you can come in here, you can add 900 square feet to your house, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, kitchenette type of style thing. And this town really can't restrict you on that beyond that. There's still opportunities to come before the zoning board if you wanted something larger for a special permit. But this is really, as the doctor mentioned, this is something that's going to be just putting up the standards for the state. This is what we have to have online now. The height, interestingly enough, from an architect's point of view, they say our bylaw is correct and everybody else's is wrong, which I find that kind of hard to believe, but it's true. But the height issue is really sort of a reflection of the multi-unit dwellings that we're having. A lot of the complaints of the abutters have been, they come in and they're 65 feet tall. So in order for us to be able to negotiate that and make it sort of standardized across the board, we're trying to meet everybody else's regulations around us because this developer is building in Berlin, he's building in Millbury, he's building, as you know, many different towns. So it really helps us be able to negotiate when they come in to make sure that we have a standardized set of plans like everybody else does around here. It just kind of filters it out for us a little bit easier. Did I miss anything? No? Okay, so that's pretty much what the purpose of those are. And I will come back up and speak as to what Mr. Rafferty has concerned with, and I appreciate the fact that he agrees with it. But that's for another few more minutes down the road, but thank you. So that's all.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions regarding these articles? Please.
Roger Armstrong. As I'm looking over all of these articles, or a number of them, they all seem to address the same thing, this idea that the state is mandating things. Personally, I hate the idea of being mandated, but I mean, it looks to me as though they're trying to turn Auburn into Worcester. They're essentially saying, okay, you're going to be an extension of this urban area. Frankly, if I had wanted to live in an urban area, I'd have moved to Boston. So my question is, if I am correct, that there's other towns that are not happy with this. Is there any pushback taking place? Is there cities and towns that are saying, hey, we're not going to do this?
Sure, I can take a stab at that. There have been other communities that have filed lawsuits against the state with respect to the MBTA Communities Act. They recently lost that lawsuit. So the Supreme Judicial Court, which is the highest court in Massachusetts, ruled in favor of the state and said that the communities within the catchment zone have to comply with the MBTA Communities Act. What they did say is that the way that the state went about implementing some of the penalties did not follow the prescription of the way that states have to create the CMRs that actually say how a municipality has to follow that. So while they've peeled back that, what they've said is the state has to go back, properly write those CMRs, which are, essentially be the punishment, as Dr. Menard said, if we do not comply, which is that there are various state funding programs, state grant programs that we will no longer be eligible for if we do not comply. To my knowledge, however, though, so there is, Auburn to date has complied with the MBTA Communities Act. We have to update this most recent one to comply further.
We're still working on complying. We have not received final certification, but we've made some big steps towards it.
The nearest community to ours that has quote unquote fought it is the town of Holden. They were party to that lawsuit that lost. They are doing a 2-track tier. So as a selectman, I will say that, and not talking on a professional staff level, they are playing a political standpoint where their town manager and their select board are saying, we are going to fight this. But at the same time, they are putting in zoning changes to comply because they understand the realization is that the Supreme Judicial Court has said you must comply.
Okay, that takes a lot of wind out of my sails. Beyond that, just a couple of comments. I'm looking at some of the wording, and it says we're going to encourage compliance. I didn't know that it was optional. And then we're taking single-family homes. We're going to put accessory buildings on them, and we're going to continue to call them single-family homes. I mean, does that cause confusion down the road when we're looking at zoning? Or I'm just afraid, somebody comes in and you have a street where everybody puts an accessory building on. The next thing you don't have accessory buildings, you don't have single-family homes, you have a street that's an apartment building.
So I can try to answer that. The accessory is, as it says, it's supposed to be kind of subservient to the single family. It's supposed to be much smaller. Can't be more than 50% of the single family home or 900 feet, whatever it is, fits. So like in 1,000 square foot house, 2,000 square foot house, you can have a 900 square foot unit. If you have a 1,200 square foot house, you can have a 600 square foot. So it's supposed to be substantially smaller than the single family house.
But it's not a single-family home anymore. You have two families living in there.
They're not considered duplex. It's still considered a single family because it's an accessory use. Duplex is different. That still requires a special permit. That still requires different permitting. And the size is limited, and also the one-bedroom aspect of the accessory apartment is important. You're not having multiple bedrooms. They're not designed to attract families. It's designed to attract a single person or a couple. So
I mean, it seems to me, and I realize we probably have no choice, but it just seems to me people are dancing around this with words. Just a couple more comments. In the wording here, it says where feasible. Who determines feasible?
Which portion?
Page 60. I guess it's now called section D. And it says, I'll just read it, the accessory dwelling unit shall be designed so that the appearance of the building remains that of a single-family residence, even though it's not, as much as feasibly possible.
So that would be the building commissioner. When they apply for a building permit, they're going to submit all the architectural plans, and it will fall on the building commissioner who would hold this.
And who decides what feasible is?
That would be up to the architect and the building commissioner. Building commissioner would have to approve any building permits.
Okay, I mean, are there any guidelines or any, I mean, the word feasible just leaves the thing open. All right, I'll sit down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Chambers, Bancroft Street. Dr. Menard, can you explain, will they get an additional address with an accessory dwelling, whereas a multifamily has multiple addresses? Is that, can you apply for a separate address with an accessory dwelling unit?
Yes, thank you. We have discussed that internally several times regarding addressing. We've talked to the building commissioner and the assessor's office, and they will have a separate address. It'll be something like 104 Central Street -1 or 104 Central Street -2. So each unit will have a separate address.
So what's the definition between multifamily and accessory dwelling at that point, except for size?
That's really what's going to pertain to it is size, the no deed restrictions, how it's permitted. Duplex still needs a special permit through the ZBA. Accessory apartment doesn't. Duplexes tend to look a lot different than what an accessory apartment will look like. They may seem like they're similar, but there are specific differences in how they're built and what's allowed per an accessory apartment. And if this passes, if this doesn't pass, we'll just have to follow on what the state requires, and the state allows them by right as is. So we're just trying to limit the scope of what an accessory apartment is. Our duplex is a full two houses, full.
So if a new house was to be built, could a accessory dwelling be part of that initial phase? And then how do you determine that it's not a multifamily there? Is it the only restriction is one has to be 50% bigger than the other?
That's one of the main restrictions, yes.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, if we don't pass these warrant articles, we both lose access to state grants, correct?
Or for the MBTA community and for Article 19.
Okay. And we also lose the ability to set any sort of restriction because these become like allowable by right under state law. So we can either choose between voting for this, which imposes some level of restriction on accessory dwellings, or we can vote against it and have no restrictions because the state has imposed state law. So I understand people are upset about the fact that we're in the middle of a housing crisis and we're attempting to build more housing, but our choices are not more housing or no more housing. Our choices are Auburn, through the administration that we have hired and elected, get to choose how we restrict that housing, or the state does. If you don't want the state to mandate what we're doing, pass this, because otherwise the state has already done it. Like you're presenting a false choice. Accessory dwelling units are happening either way, guys. It's happening. It is state law. So the choice is either we allow the town planner, who's put a lot of time and effort into this and got approval of the zoning bylaw review board in town to actually put in rules that apply to our community, or we don't, and we are subject to the same rules that the state legislature, which some people don't seem to trust, have already put in place. So those are your two choices.
Sure, come on up.
Hi, Robert Tatro again. So to be clear, we do have a couple of different housing things that we should be talking about. Okay, so we do have the tiny homes that we passed, what was that, a couple of years back, was that? Tiny homes, where they could bring a prefab type unit, pull it into your property and plug it in. Okay, so we already have those. These are accessory dwelling units, which we refer to as simply an addition, a mother-in-law's apartment, if you will, right? This is what these things really are. So what I can tell you, I think I've been on the zoning board now for coming up on 15 years at least. I can probably count 20 and 15 years that have come up. You're not going to all of a sudden see a flood of these things in every neighborhood. First of all, people aren't financially there to do it. Not everybody has generational desire, right? Not everybody has an older parent or a situation that they might want to do that. However, for those people that do, the idea here is to provide a multi-generational opportunity for people. So if you have a house that you've been paid off, you've been paying on for 20 or 30, 40 years or whatever it might be, and you want to stay there, you can now move into a small apartment. Your children or whoever you designate can move into the larger portion of the home. Now this becomes basically you're freeing up a generation of getting them out of mortgage debt, if you really want to put it that way, right? Because the people that I know that are doing this, that's what they're doing. They're putting their older parents into the home with them. They're combining their finances. The nursing homes aren't getting it. And it's stabilizing the family for generations to come. So from a homeowner's point of view, it's a very wise choice. And I understand the concern, but I can really tell you, I don't think you're going to see a flood of them in town, quite frankly. And the other thing is, if I was given a choice, I would take accessory dwelling units or tiny homes every day because they don't impact the rest of our services. They're not going to put 150 children in the school. They're not going to require a substantial amount of more traffic generation, water, sewer, all those things. They're really kind of pretty much friendly. And if you're going to put it on there, it's going to benefit your property. You might pay your additional taxes based on what you build, but again, it's your investment. So I really see these things as kind of protectionary for the homeowners in town, because if we do start getting swallowed up by these larger apartment complexes, you're going to have something to fall back on. Quite honestly, that's what I personally see this as. So thank you for your time.
Let me just add a point about the tiny homes. Though there is a bylaw, the building code hasn't caught up to our bylaw yet. The state still needs to update their building code to allow them to be built. So currently, they're not allowed to be built.
Hi, Joe Schmidt, Precinct 1. I understand the auxiliary dwelling units for families, friends, neighbors, okay, but I seem to read under Article 18 that you're specifically excluding the requirement that it be owner occupied. Okay, so to me, that says that I can come in, buy a single family house, okay, put an accessory dwelling unit in it, become a landlord, move out, okay, and now I have a tenement, okay, and it says that this would ensure the character of the neighborhood, okay, go to any neighborhood in town and you can pick out the ones that are owner occupied and the ones that are tenant occupied. Okay, there's a difference.
Correct, I understand that. And the reason that was struck in is the state considers that an unreasonable restriction on accessory apartments.
Okay,
That's
but
not-
all of these articles that we have here, okay, are by exception right now. And what we're trying to do is modify the bylaws and to make them by right.
Well, correct. For the accessory bylaw, currently with the per state law, regardless of the town's bylaw, they're allowed by right. There are no deed restrictions. That's considered unreasonable by the state. And owner occupied is also considered unreasonable restriction by the state. So already those are out the window regardless of any changes made by town meeting.
So if we say at town meeting, okay, see you later, state, we're not going to approve this as a town meeting body, the state then dictates? Okay, thank you.
Sure, come on up.
Yeah, these changes like the gentleman said, what this does is this allows, I think the saying is proper, the cat gets his nose under the door. This is what happens when you sell the property. Suddenly you become a landlord. Also, who's watching to see who's actually living in these accessory apartments? As far as the penalty from the state, how much money do we lose? Can you give me a figure? How much money do we lose? Is it substantial? Because what I heard is it doesn't seem to be that substantial. Also, 40B tells the state we have to do what the state says under 40B. This almost seems like it's a sub 40B type of legislation where it's saying, yeah, you should pass this because we're still in charge and we're going to force you to do this. Well, if the state mandates it, why does town meeting get to vote on it? That's what you have to ask yourself. Okay, so I can see the moderator saying, all those in favor, and by the way, you can only vote yes on this one. That doesn't make any sense. You can vote no, and you can take the consequences, and you have to take a stand like Mr. Techo is doing with the building moratorium. You've got to take a stand. On the one hand, he wants a building moratorium and wants to fly in the face of state law. But on the other hand, all these minor zoning changes, they're okay. Let's go with that. I disagree.
So that one with regard on the accessory dwelling. If town doesn't pass if the town denies this and we stick with what the state says, it is possible that the state will release new guidelines and, suddenly you can build them on a duplex or you can build them on multifamily. You can have multiple accessory units on beyond a single family, beyond the limited scope we're trying to set out. So we don't know if the state's going to do that, but it is possible that it could be a bit more broader reach by what the regulations currently say.
Any more questions? Okay, moving on. Article 22 is being postponed to a later date. Article 23 is being presented by Dr. Adam Menard and Darlene Coyle, the Director of DDIS.
Thank you. So Article 23 is for a request for $6,618, and this is for Regional Housing Coordinator services. Back in 2023, Central Mass Regional Planning Commission had contacted the town and other Central Mass communities and wanted to explore some options regarding having the services available for the town for a regional coordinator. Many meetings and discussions were had, and there were 5 towns that had interest in it. So 5 towns had agreed to move forward with a scope of a regional person that would provide services, which came out to be 4 hours per week, a little less than 20 hours per month, so 16 hours per month, to provide somebody that would support each of the 5 towns to help with overall housing. So anything that had to do with housing issues, housing production plan. The town had some assistance on the housing production plan, and our 40B. This is obviously something that is important and being looked at with several towns getting 40B applications. In taking a look at what the state has for resources. Are there grants out there? Are there opportunities to create bylaws that would help assist the towns? The subsidized housing inventory, we call it SHI, looking at that number and figuring out how to get housing availability for towns that make sense in areas that towns identify. Back in 2023, they had approached us We agreed to go on board. The first year was free of those services. And then last year, we had gone to town meeting for an appropriation of about $16,700. We were able to secure that. Town meeting voted to approve that, and we were able to enter into an agreement with Central Mass Regional Housing Planning Commission. And we had a person. That person provided support for us for approximately about 6 months, and unfortunately, they left the position in December. That's just this past December. So in that time, they attended select board meetings, they attended some of our internal committee meetings, zoning bylaw review committee, and they brought ideas that were within Central Mass. When that person left the position, they have had, CMRPC has had some trouble filling the position. So what they have offered to us, since we haven't had anybody since basically December, the appropriation for the new fiscal year for FY26 is just about a little over $17,000, $17,472. Because we haven't had the advantage of having somebody in that position, we are able to use the money that we have already paid to CMRPC and be able to use that towards the next fiscal year. So the amount that we're asking is the offset for what we've already paid and to be able to use it going forward. The advantage to having this person is it gives us eyes and ears for what's happening in Central Mass in other communities. As you can see, there's a lot of work that needs to be done regarding keeping up with what's happening with housing at the state level, zoning amendments that have to be looked at, and it gives us somebody that can look and see what other towns are doing, what the state is recommending, looking at what grant opportunities are out there. This person gives us like a little bit of help to be able to tackle those challenges and be able to help us find and how to create housing that makes sense. Because obviously you see it on the news, you see it in the discussions, you see it here at our warrant articles. Housing is a big challenge for everybody, and to find more housing, to place it appropriately, and to be able to keep up with what the state requirements are, to be able to look and see if there's grant money available. That is the reason for this position. So we don't, we understand having a whole position for that would be a lot. So that's why this is for a regional position for, again, 16 hours a month. So I'm happy to answer any questions with Dr. Menard.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay. The next one is Article 24. It's sponsored by Seth Woolard, the Director of Assessing.
The assessor's office is requesting to appropriate $25,000 from the overlay surplus for assessor revaluation, and as it regards to interim updates for fiscal '26, training and support, and services or act anything relative thereto.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Article 25 is sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, and it will be presented by Selectman Todd Corain.
Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge the other board members who are here, Ann Kavanaugh, Dan Carpenter, and Steve Chambers. Feel free to jump in if I miss anything or misstate anything. This warrant article is to establish a 180-day moratorium on any multifamily building permit issuances. This began with Mr. Tatro coming before the select board and asking the board to explore with town council the possibility for putting in a moratorium on multifamily building permits for multifamily units. The board, Mr. Tatro's basis for his was the constitutionality of the 40B law, Chapter 40B law, which was passed back in 1968 or 69. And what that law basically says is that a community must have a minimum of 10% of our housing stock be deemed quote unquote affordable. And if you are under that 10%, then developers can come in, propose multifamily units, provided they set aside a certain amount of units that are affordable based on a lower rent for based on your income, and they can bypass a lot of your locally passed zoning laws, conservation laws, et cetera. And if the Zoning Board of Appeals does not issue their special permit with conditions or without conditions, they can appeal to the state, and the state can override our Zoning Board of Appeals and issue their building permit for them. So we tasked our town council not to just look at the possibility of a moratorium based on the constitutionality argument, but we asked them to look at other successful municipalities that have received moratoriums, mostly with respect to the town, like a lot of municipalities has done a lot of great work with respect to mid and long-term planning, housing production acts, master plans, et cetera, that have been put together over the past 10 years with volunteer boards, residents, town meeting members, and our professional staff. But we have not gone back and done a comprehensive overhaul of our zoning to make sure that our zoning aligns with and supports the viewpoint of those master plans, and that those master plans align with and support our zoning bylaws. So that was one of the avenues that we asked town council to explore for a possible moratorium. He reported back to the select board that he did not see merit in the constitutionality argument of a straight up moratorium based on 40B not being constitutional. It is a law dating back to 68, 69. But what he did find merit in the potential for a moratorium based on the need to align our zoning with our master plan. And he pointed to several communities in Massachusetts that have been successful in getting breathing room, shall we say, for the time to, again, make sure that our zoning and our master plan align, so that if our master plan calls for industrial in this part of town, our zoning makes industrial possible in that part of town. If our master plan calls for multifamily housing in this part of town, our zoning supports multifamily housing in this sort of town, in this part of town. And he recommended that it was possible. He thought it was the most successful avenue for the town to take to receive this moratorium. If we did it on the basis that we needed time to make sure everything aligned and provide our staff and our volunteers time to draft a comprehensive overview of our zoning bylaws, which has not been done. As you can see, we've been doing patchwork, and essentially what we have right now, because they are not aligned, we have the tail wagging the dog. We have developers able to come in, bypass our zoning bylaws, decide where they want to put housing, and we're at their whim. So our goal is to request from the Attorney General, who gets to ultimately decide, a 180-day moratorium on the issuance of any building permits for multifamily units, so that we can do our due diligence and bring back to the fall town meeting a zoning bylaw overhaul that aligns all of our goals, all of our master plans with our zoning bylaws.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, moving on. Article 26, 27, 28, 29 will be presented by the Assistant DPW Director, Nick Schwartz.
Good evening. I'm going to do each of these individually because they're all sort of separate issues, and I'll take questions on each one as we go, if that's all right. So Article 26, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $250,000 from sewer retained earnings to conduct an asset management plan. So this is, we became aware of a grant opportunity through the state revolving fund that offers grant funding for sewer asset management planning up to a $250,000 project cost. They will provide a 60% grant. So we engaged with an engineering firm last summer and put together a proposal that we submitted to SRF in July. The draft intended use plans came out in January, and the town's asset management plan was accepted for SRF grant funding. So the way the grant is sort of structured, the sewer department has to appropriate the full amount of the project. But then once the project is completed, then SRF will reimburse for 60% of the asset management plan. And what this plan does is it's going to allow us to inventory all of our sewer assets and do a lot of long-term planning, capital planning. We're going to look at all of our buried infrastructure, our pump stations, the age, the lifespan, do criticality, risk analysis, and come up with sort of a long-term plan on how we're going to upgrade some of the most needy assets. And that'll help inform the Board of Sewer Commissioners as we look at our budgets going forward and try to more effectively affect the sewer rates.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
So the next article, Article 27, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $150,000 from sewer retained earnings for sewer easement access improvements. This is mostly tied to a project that we're working on. We did a sewer system evaluation survey where we surveyed 10% of our most high-risk area in town based off of an infiltration inflow survey that was done several years back. The results of that survey generated a list of recommendations, the highest priority of which is the rehabilitation of the 24-inch concrete gravity sewer that runs off-road from Goddard Drive through the woods, through a cleared easement, and towards Route 20. So this is a about $1.5 million project. We submitted that to SRF for SRF loan funding, and that was not approved. It just didn't make the cutoff. There's a lot of projects that are applied for each year, and basically they rank each project and they kind of cut it off at a certain point. And it was sort of a top-heavy ranking this year, it seemed. So we're pretty far down the list. We don't expect if we were to reapply, we would get SRF loans. So we're looking at how to more cost-effectively do this project and have the least impact to sewer ratepayers, or as much so as possible. So one thing that we're looking at doing is there's an easement access portion of this project because it runs off-road. Some of the parts of this sewer are very difficult to get to, and it's going to be a challenge for the contractor to get their equipment in. So we need to improve access into these woods, essentially. So we're looking to cleave off that part of the project and do some of that work internally or bid it out to a local contractor to do that prior to putting the full lining project out to bid. So this money would hopefully cover at least most of that cost.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, Article 28.
Article 28, okay. So this is to see if the town meeting will vote to accept changes to the drainage easement along the private portion of Commonwealth Ave and on 5 Commonwealth Ave, as shown on a plan prepared by Land Planning. So this is an existing drainage easement that's on 5 Commonwealth Ave. So based on the available records we have, the easement does not encompass the existing town-owned drainage pipes. For whatever reason, whenever it was done back in the 70s, didn't match up. So this article changes the easement. It released some of the unused portions, where there is no drainage infrastructure located, and expands other portions to the on the property and within the private right-of-way to allow the town full legal access to the drainage pipes, essentially cleaning up the situation that we seem to have over there.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, on to Article 29. I think I'm going to do that.
I can.
Just wondering if you guys, should we watch? No. Sorry, Joanna.
Get it started.
You got it? Okay.
So, Article 29 is to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $210,000 from cable retained earnings to cover unforeseen cost overruns due to rising construction material costs, asbestos remediation, and oil tank removal at Camp Gleason. So this is an ongoing project I'm sure many people are familiar with. There was a number of unforeseen costs that were run into as part of this project. Essentially, the amount that we are requesting at this time is what we're expecting to need through the remainder of the project.
Do we have any questions? Seeing none, Article 30 is sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, and to discuss it is Selectman Todd Corain.
Thank you. So when it comes to property tax, there's a series of state laws that allow a municipality to offer tax abatements or reductions in your property tax for different classes, including seniors, blind individuals, businesses, veterans, etc. The state law establishes criteria that a municipality has to work within with respect to for Article 30, which is the senior property tax abatement, is based off of the age of the resident, has required that they're owner occupied, that they live in the residence a certain amount of years, and they set a income threshold for their income, not including the value of the house or their car, has to be below a certain limit. And as board members were discussing each year with our tax classification hearings, as well as meeting and talking with residents, we continuously heard that that although this is a great program and there are individuals in the town of Auburn that take advantage of it, while the state was very good at setting this up, and the state has not been good about changing the law and increasing those income levels as time goes on. So the last time that those income levels were changed were many years ago. They don't factor in regular cost of living increases that go on. So what we are asking is for town meetings permission for home rule petition that would allow the town of Auburn to take several actions with respect to the senior property tax abatement that to increase the amount of our, the numbers of our population who are elderly residents to qualify for this tax abatement program. And what this does is it will increase the income level. It will tie it to the cost of living increases. It will also allow for those residences where they live in the home with their adult child to be qualified as well. So basically, the town can't do it on our own. So provided town meeting adopts this, we then have to file legislation with the state, and the state legislature has to agree to give Auburn this special permission. And then the governor signs it, and then we're able to offer those additional tax benefits. And the main goal here, as Mr. Tatro said earlier, is to allow our senior residents to age in place, to remain in the community that they have helped build, that they raise their children in the home that they live in, and to allow them to continue and make it economically feasible for them to remain part of Auburn. So essentially, we're asking for town meetings permission to file that home rule petition. Auburn is certainly not the only community that has done this. Of course, it would be great if the state would keep up with in changing their state laws and doing this on their own. But since they're not, the select board is asking town meeting to step in to support our residents.
Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, Article,
There's one.
oh, sorry. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Mike Marshall. I just want to understand the mechanics because I do think it is a little bit confusing to read it versus to like understand how it would work in practice. And so essentially, this is allowing more people to be eligible for a credit and also increasing the credit. But ultimately, it's been explained that it is revenue neutral. And essentially, the reasoning for that is that those who are eligible for the abatement don't pay that tax, but it's passed on to the rest of the tax base. And I just want to make sure people understand that that's how it works. I honestly have no idea how I'm going to vote on it, but I like, can you just explain that?
No, that is correct. Similar to other tax programs, it's essentially the town will have to make up the lost revenue by spreading it across the rest of the pie in the rest of the taxpayers. But when you factor in the amount that actually is going to be saved for these residents and divided amongst all the other taxpayers, we're talking pennies on the dollar.
Anyone else have any questions?
So Article 31 is the next.
One second.
Oh, sorry.
As someone who could potentially benefit from that, I'm kind of borderline. And I want to commend you for thinking about it, because I found myself asking when I saw the legislation about the abatement, well, you know, what about inflation, yada, yada, yada? You know, have they attempted to handle this? And I guess I have one other idea that is related that I probably shouldn't bring up now, but I'll try to make it really quick. And that is, sometimes being house poor is a difficult position because I know that there's a lot of money that I'm sleeping in all the time. And I know that were I to die before my wife, that the lost Social Security income would the fact that she would get the larger of the two pots would not be adequate in terms of keeping things going. There would still be a shortfall. And this is not a huge step, but it's significant in its intent as it was when originally passed. And so, yeah, I was hoping at some time that somebody would come up with a way of prepaying taxes. I know there's no fund for it, you can't, but at some point, because we have some small amount of investment and our main goal is to keep it safe. And, there are strategies for that, but if you could pay your taxes ahead of time, that could be a win-win for the town and for the individual. But I'll find somebody to badger with my idea at a later date.
I would certainly defer to our professional staff on whether that's a possibility that I think you can discuss with them.
But really, kudos for thinking of that.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any more questions on this item? Okay.
So the next Article 31 is along the same lines with respect to our support for our small businesses. So currently, state law allows a small property tax abatement for commercial properties that are, correct me if I'm wrong, Seth, $1 million or less.
Correct.
As well,
Less than $1 million.
Less than $1 million, and all of their renters or those commercial entities within there have to qualify based on their profit as well.
10 employees per business, and if there's multiple businesses in let's say it's a strip mall, they all have to have 10 employees or under.
Right. So when we looked at and when we talked to the Chamber of Commerce, who comes in every year to talk about taxes with the select board, and talked with residents who wanted to see more small businesses come in. Small businesses themselves, 10 employees is a really small amount. So during COVID time, when the federal government was identifying, even the state government was identifying small employees, small businesses, it was 50 employees or more, or less. Or it was $5 million or less for income. And then you can get those PPP loans, et cetera. So their own, again, it was a case where the legislation they passed many moons ago was not being updated to current standards on what really was a small business. And Representative Frost, to his credit, had tried to change this on the entire statewide scale in the last legislative cycle and was not able to get it passed. However, there has been, instances where home rule petitions on a municipality level, the state legislature has been more favorable to that because it's not a statewide change. If Auburn wants to do it, the state legislature will generally, okay, we'll let Auburn do it. So what we are proposing here is to increase that $1 million to $5 million. We're also increasing the employee count, I believe, to 25 from 10. And we're also saying that only a certain percentage of the businesses within that entire unit have to qualify. So if you have a strip mall where, let's say, where Heritage is, you could have all those, you have the yoga studio, Heritage, but then you have a corporate bank on the end. That corporate bank means it doesn't apply for anybody. That throws it out. So this would actually allow that property to now qualify for that tax abatement. And similar to the senior tax abatement that Mr. Marshall asked about, the way that this currently works is that the rest of the uncollected taxes are spread across the other commercial and industrial tax base. So those larger businesses support the smaller businesses. And we're essentially just trying to realign what is a small business to current thinking.
Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none.
Okay. So where am I now? Article 32, the HEROES Act. So this one we can actually do right away. This will start upon town meeting's approval. The HEROES Act was recently signed last year into law by the governor, and it increased the veterans' property tax benefit programs in several different ways. For the town, we're able to tie the increase to the cost of living again. This was passed as a local option. So although the state said you can do this, a local municipality, the legislative body, being town meeting, has to say we want to do it. So we're asking town meeting to adopt the two provisions of the HEROES Act that would apply to Auburn that would increase the tax benefit, property tax benefit for our veterans.
Does anyone have any questions? Please.
Are there any requirements of these changes that you seek out and identify and notify these people that are entitled to these to this tax relief?
So I'll actually let Seth discuss how the assessor goes about advertising this.
Well, in the past, we've had workshops at like the senior center. We do mailers every September to all the people who are entitled. We also try to get it out on the website and maybe out at the local publications and newspapers. And I think this one actually says that the veteran can be a trustee and hold beneficial interest. So it expands the eligibility, maybe if veterans hold it in a trust or they're the beneficiary. So at this point in time, that's pretty much what we do. We could try to come up with other strategies to promote it through our veterans agent. He's in touch with the community and is very proactive as well.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions on this item? Okay. The next group of items are citizens petitions. I'll start from the top. Article 33, William Barakis. Is he here tonight? Okay, let's go to Article 34, update on soliciting bylaws. Robert Tatro.
Hello, good evening, Robert Tatro again. So this is an update. We've had series of complaints about people, door knocking, soliciting early Saturday and Sunday mornings or whenever it's not appropriate. So we did a little bit of research. We found this is an excerpt from the Foxborough bylaw, which is considered to be one of the better ones in the state. So it will just be an insert into the existing bylaw that we have now. What we're going to do is you're going to have a spot on the homepage, whether it be the Auburn Guide or wherever they designate it. You'll be able to go in, fill out a simple form, name, address, do not solicit. On the other end of that, when that soliciting agency or that person comes in and they fill out their permit and they pay their fee, they're going to be required to have a copy of that list, your do not solicit list, excuse me. It will not have your name on it. It will only have your address. So they won't have any personal information for you at all. And then it's just going to be a do not solicit list. So they automatically know, don't come to your house. They won't walk up to your doorway on a Saturday morning when you're out gardening or, whatever it might be. So that's the existing bylaw update for this purpose. According to the town, I think we've discussed it and the town clerk says there's no issue. The IT people say the existing infrastructure is already there. And they're actually going to use the program that is similar to a public relations request from either the police or the fire department. So pretty much it's a plug and play situation that will enhance the quality of life for the homeowners, hopefully. So that was the goal and purpose of that one.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Tatro? Please come up.
Ellen Ethia, Precinct 5. I have an issue with the time. It says 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Most nights at 8 p.m. it's dark. I'm not letting anybody in my house or into my door. I think we should change that to like 5 o'clock. Be reasonable at times when it's, if you say dusk, then you got all the way into, the summer months when dusk could be at 7:30, 8 o'clock. I think we need to set a better time so that it's not in the dark.
Thank you. Does anyone else, do you want to speak?
Well, if you don't mind, if I could through the chair, please. So I'm not really sure if there is a state restriction or any kind of regulation on that. All we did was add the excerpt of, I think it actually should be redlined. I'm not really sure if maybe they didn't get a color one, but it was really just for the simple fact of the soliciting database. So as far as changing the other parts of the soliciting bylaw, I don't think we had effect on that part. I think that might be existing in the bylaw now. No, what I'm saying is if you're saying the time frame, I don't believe that at least my knowledge, we didn't change the time frame.
Because it says the law allows to solicit a canvas 10 a.m. to 8 p.m.
And that's been correct, but that's been in the bylaw since the bylaw was created 30 years ago, whatever it might be. So I certainly agree with you if you wanted to change it, but that would be something we could do after. But what we're trying to do is just make sure this is just for the creation of the do not solicit and do not knock list, basically, is what it is.
Mr. Rafferty?
Just quickly, as a town meeting member, you can stand up and motion to amend it at town meeting. Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions on this item? Okay, Article 36, approve, 35, traffic study bylaw, Bob Tatro. The traffic study bylaw.
So again, this came up recently during all of this 40B conversations that we've had. One of the issues they're concerned with Perry Place was the intersections around there and the safety related issues. The other issue, I believe, was the recent concern where they wanted to put a Starbucks in where Bentley's is, and there was a lot of concerns with that. So this was the response. We found out that a lot of other towns have these traffic study bylaws, but Auburn does not. So it was brought to our attention from a person that actually conducts traffic studies that said, if you had one, we would have different regulations. So again, this is in response to not having one. With all of these larger projects coming in, my concern is being able to protect the integrity of the neighborhoods. Okay, that's really the most important thing, especially as you see now they're loading equipment down here. They're parking it along Route 12 on Southbridge Street. They're digging up. They're getting ready to expand the pike. all of those things. So this is going to protect our neighborhoods by expanding and establishing a perimeter of where they should be studying. So we didn't have anything like that before. As a matter of fact, Selectman Corain and I believe Selectman Carpenter have actually already discussed strengthening it and making it a little bit wider than what I kind of recommended. So hopefully you will pass that, and if you do, then they may recommend sending it right back to the Zoning Board Review Committee and making it a little bit stronger based on their recommendations as well. So again, this is something to protect the homeowners and the integrity in the neighborhoods. So thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, seeing none. The next one is Bob Tatro again, approved televised recordings.
Okay, so televised recordings. We only have 2 departments currently that do not record their meetings. And what it basically says in our bylaw is each board can make its own decision. My idea is to remove that. We want to be able to have full transparency with everyone. I want to be able to see it in my house. I don't have time to go down and get minutes for a meeting and review what they had to say. It's the water department and the sewer department that are the only ones that are left. So I am proposing that we just change that simple wording in the bylaw to make it everyone shall, and then they have to have the meetings recorded for public access and ease of information. That's really about it.
Mr. Rafferty?
As you know, I'm all in favor of transparency. I love open meeting law. The problem is the Auburn Water Department is not a town department, so I'm not sure how you can enforce that on those folks. You certainly can impose it on the sewer, and I guess we might have someone from the sewer department. I was wondering how he felt about this. But once again, I'm not sure how you can impose it on them. Certainly, through the chair to Mr. Tatro, you had an opportunity to pressure the Auburn Board, the Auburn Water Department, to comply with this. Recently, someone wanted to put a transmitter towers, cell phone transmitter towers, on some of their property, and they're going to get revenue from it. You certainly could have negotiated with them that in exchange for having public access and video recordings of their meetings, that contingent upon you giving them the right to put these cell towers, these transmitter towers on their property, because as you know, you had to give them some exemptions to existing bylaws for them to do that. But instead, you approved it and you gave it to them, and I think you unfortunately gave away some negotiating power.
Ann, come on up.
Ann Kavanaugh, question for Mr. Tatro. The article references Auburn Water District, which is an independent board, so I'm not sure, referring to what Mr. Rafferty said, I'm not sure how the town can compel them to televise. What about the other water district in town, the Elm Hill Water District? Can we compel them also, or does this article even address it?
Thank you.
So if I may, please, through the chair.
Of course.
So I'll address the first thing first, I guess. I can't negotiate for the water department to do something unusual with a permit request for a cell tower on their property. I can't say, oh, well, I'll grant you the permit if, you'd be willing to put your meetings on TV. That's just completely out of the scope and responsibility of the Zoning Board of Appeals. My concerns here is the fact that they are an elected board. They service the community. This was something that created in, 1967, same time this 40B law that we talk about. And we're finding out now that very specifically that these laws from this time do not apply well now, and they're all being rewritten. So the water department is nothing unique to that time frame. They created a little fiefdom down there, and we have no control over it as taxpayers or as citizens. So yes, the Attorney General, quite frankly, could come back and say, I'm not even going to read this. I'm not even interested in it. You have no authority over it. But we'll never know until we ask. And that's the whole point. This isn't going to cost us anything. And matter of fact, they might say you can't compel them to televise the meetings. And that could be certainly true too. They could also say, yes, you can compel them to do the meetings, but the town doesn't have to pay for it. So at which time they might say, okay, you're going to open up your own YouTube channel and you're going to put a camera in your room. There's a million other possibilities that could happen. This is just a probe. I think none of us are completely unaware of the numerous complaints that we've had regarding the transparency of the water department, the quality of the water allegedly in town, which I don't particularly think that is true, but it's just the point of that. I am aware of the fact that they've had contaminations in certain wells because of the non-compliance of the Mass Pike, not their fault. And there's other violations that we are aware of that I don't need to bring up in public here. I'm not trying to besmirch anybody, that we've had transparency issues before. So it's quite simple. That's it. I mean, you know, I want to know how my money's being spent. I want to know how my money's being used. We elect them and we pay them to give us a service. Put it on TV so we can watch you. That's simple as that. So again, it won't cost us anything to send it to the Attorney General, and she could quite frankly say no. So, but we have to probe somewhere and find out and begin with something. So there you go.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, moving on. Article 37 was postponed into a later date. Article 38, Mr. Tatro, multi-unit apartment moratorium.
I swear this is my last one. So to mirror what Selectman Corain, you did a very good job of summarizing 40B earlier, by the way. Congratulations. Not easy to summarize and be accurate with all of it. So we provided you with a copy of a report that basically demonstrates that there is built-in racism in the state process of 40B. And so what I wanted to point out to you is this. Amy Dane from Dane Research, okay? She's the person that wrote this report. That report also is done by Boston Indicators, right? So Amy Dane, Dane Research, November 23rd, November 2023, commissioned and advised by Boston Indicators, Race, Wealth, and Equity Resource Center. It goes on and it shows 3 different towns how they avoid the whole 40B process by paying higher taxes and not taking any of the funds from the state. So that's not equal enforcement under the law. Okay, we have to be able to do that. I think somebody mentioned earlier, you know, it's on the other end when it comes to taxes and fees for us. It's, you know, we have to pay it. We're responsible for paying it. But on the other end, because these towns are wealthy, they're buying their way out of it. And that's not equal protection under the law. That's not equal enforcement of the law. So that's one of the reasons what I really have issue with 40B housing. If you're going to do it, make it so every community has to abide by it. It has to be equal and fair across the board. Okay, so that was the one issue I have. But going back to this whole thing is, if you go to the state housing plan, who do they refer to right in the opening chapter? But Boston Indicators, Amy Dane of Dane Research, and they go into how this is supposed to benefit all of the allegedly housing issues they need and they're supposed to have, but they completely eliminate and don't discuss this exclusionary by design report that shows that they're allowing certain towns and certain communities to skirt the laws. So again, this may not be a binding issue. I can't guarantee that this would put a stop to it, but we have to at least, I think, as a community, stand up and say, we know that you're not even abiding by your own reports when you're creating these plans. You have to at least, if you're going to fund these reports and you're going to have these come back, you have to use the information that you get, whether you like that information or not. You can't skew it so you can continue to build multi-unit housings all over the state without any regulation. So that's why I really think it's important to pass that. And I can demonstrate that right here in my phone, that if you go into footnote 8 on the MassGov website where they use the state housing plan, it's right there, footnote number 8, bostonindicators.org. Again, the very first paragraph, they mention Amy Dane from Dane Research, but they do not mention anything of the fact that she found there is inherent racism in this system. So as a community, I can't stand for that. And that's why, I'm urging you to please pass this and send it to the Attorney General's office and identify that. So thank you. And that's all I have. I promise that's my last one, I think, for the night.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Tatro about this article? Okay. Moving on. Article 39, sponsored by Steve Consilvio.
I'm going to steal a line from Bob, but laws do not apply well to this time, is how he put it. And I think we've got 4 articles tonight on property tax, which is on top of property 2.5. So I think we have a problem with how we raise revenue. And it's an old problem. And the solutions for the property tax abatements are all based on income tax or income wherewithal. So the question becomes, why wouldn't we just tax based on income tax straight through, from the town level to the state level and obviously to the federal level? Like, why do we have 3 different taxes? We're basically taking the money out of the same pockets. People have the same profile. If you're house poor, because you bought a house 40 years ago, like it doesn't make sense to be taxing somebody based on an assessed rate, which is not liquid. So that's the first one, which is why I think we should just, we should ask the state for the freedom to tax the way we want to tax ourselves, rather than having the state say we have to use property tax. Because it's just, property tax puts the grandchildren against the grandparents because the schools want money, but the seniors are on fixed income. I mean, it just creates so many conflicts that a income tax would not have those conflicts, because you could make it progressive, even if you make it flat, which it shouldn't be. It's just so much more simple. You're going to tax people based on their liquid resources and not based on something they bought 30 years ago. So that's the first thing, is to start the process. And the thing is, this commercial, I'm not going to say that this is a simple solution to implement. However, you can take whatever formula that gets created, you can run it backwards, 5 years, 10 years, however long, because we have the data. This Department of Revenue has the data of how much money we've collected, how much we've paid in income tax. So this isn't really a difficult thing, but you have to have the will to do it. And so I can't ask, if I go to the State House and knock on the door, they're not going to say, oh, yes, Steve, great idea, we should do this. No one's going to do that. But if town meeting says, we want to investigate this, it would change the politics dramatically. And so that's why I think we should vote yes on this.
Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, Article 40. There was? Oh, I didn't see, I'm sorry, come on up.
Precinct 1, why can't we do the study before you go to the state?
We don't have the data. There's no way.
Would the state not give us the data to? Have we asked them?
I've asked them, no. Because if you ask them, because you would be able to tell who made how much money, supposedly. I did find some census data.
Yeah.
So Massachusetts, Auburn is very, economically, we're very homogeneous. We don't have very many poor people. We don't have very many very rich people. We're all pretty much in the middle. And you can tell that from the census data. But you have to be able to cross-reference that to property values.
Okay, but I
Because
mean, if you're not identifying a
we-
person's name, if you're just going by,
They wouldn't give it me.
okay,
All I have is like a census report. I probably from the,
answers my question.
But I think I don't think it would be hard to do.
No.
I just think, but you have to ask the question and get them to do it.
anyone else have any questions? Article 39. Moving on to Article 40.
And the second one, of course, is about forming a CDFI, which is, which would essentially, we would create our own insurance company, and we would self-insure ourselves the same way like currently we are self-insuring the town employees for health insurance. And we do that because you save a ton of money doing that. And nobody's getting sick on purpose, and nobody's getting an unnecessary operation. Nobody is running to get extra health care. It's not that much fun. It's the same thing. Nobody's trying to burn down their house. Nobody's trying to get a leak. You're just trying to protect yourself and repair the damages and go on to the next step in your life. The insurance companies obviously having a lot of problems because people are building too many houses next to the ocean and because of the forest fires and all the other stuff. But generically, we don't have a lot of, besides a snow load with rain on top of it, in a miraculous hurricane or earthquake, we're not really in any kind of a high-risk zone. We're paying for everybody else's high risk. So if we self-insure ourselves, and it's going to be local people picking up the repairs, there's no reason for us to be shipping money out to New York or Hartford. We're making very good profit margins. We could be using this as a municipal asset and covering ourselves. And a CDFI can also become a community bank. So we can also be borrowing from ourselves instead of, again, shipping money to New York City. So there's just a lot of different ways. It's all about the flow of money, ultimately, and changing the flow. There is still, you've all got my letter. Let me take a glass of water. There's a lot of the why in that letter, which I realize is not necessarily easy to grasp. And then there's the what. And the what is pretty simple. We just need to create a CDFI so that we are financially bound together, so we don't have people that are house poor. We don't have seniors that, that are stuck, or veterans, or small businesses that are struggling. We shouldn't be, and we are, statistically. Thank you very much. I definitely needed that. Financially, we're all pretty similar. So we're all going through the same things. Car repairs are too much, insurance bills are too much, taxes are too much. But the money is just flowing from the taxes to the businesses, to the banks, and it's just going in a big circle. And as we keep adding our percentages, 2.5% increase in taxes, 2.5% raises, 6% in insurance rates. We're just chasing the same snowball down the hill. We're creating this whole problem. The king is gone. We can't blame the king. We're 250 years into this experiment. Something is totally out of whack when you have a $34 trillion deficit. The federal government, God bless them, have no idea what they're doing. They really don't. This country started here in town meeting. If we change, the next town will change, the next town will change, the state will change, the government will change. But it has to start here. It's not going to start anywhere else. It really isn't. I've studied too much history. I just don't see any other way we can make a change. If I had $1 billion, I couldn't change the world. This group of people could change the world. It's really that simple. And it's just by writing down different numbers. Because all of our problems are bookkeeping problems. There isn't one problem that we've discussed tonight that is not a bookkeeping problem. Change the bookkeeping. And all these problems will go away. How many people are in town meeting? 110. 70 people vote yes. The State House can't ignore us. We have as many bodies in our meeting room as they have in theirs. And all we're asking for is home rule. We're not telling them to change it in any other town. We're just saying, let us try something. Let us experiment. Let us work together and come up with the better solution. You guys can all copy us tomorrow. Let us work on it today. Anyway, any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
So there's one more. Dan Largess, is he here? Okay, so that is the end of our articles. Sure, come on up.
Madam Chair, would it be inappropriate to ask a question on an earlier warrant article that I forgot to ask?
No, sure, go ahead.
Thank you. You're so gracious. Article 7. This is the one where the town can acquire and through tax title foreclosure proceedings and basically if people are behind in their taxes, the town can sell the property and reclaim the taxes. As I understand it, under state law, and this is now something that's being debated before the state and in other states across the country, what happens is when your property is seized and sold, they take what taxes they owe and they keep the rest of the equity, which I think you can agree with me that that's not fair. But I think it's now being considered, am I correct that it's being considered right now to change that law?
No, so actually there's a Supreme Court, two, perhaps three Supreme Court decisions that came down in the last 4 years that have said that that type of taking is no longer allowed. You're allowed to take it, you're allowed to sell it, you're allowed to recoup your unearned taxes, and then the rest of the profit has to go back to whoever owned the property.
And so the town of Auburn will abide by that decision?
I will defer to town administration, but we will have to
okay,
just abide by the Supreme Court decision.
Some people don't abide by Supreme Court decisions.
Anyone else have anything else to offer? Come on up.
I'm not a big fan of that law either. I think we should rewrite it so that the town meeting, if we're going to take a piece of property, the town meeting should be voting on it and not the Board of Selectmen or Select Board.
Thank you. So that's the end of our warrant articles. I do want to let everyone here know that we did reserve 2 nights, just in case it goes over the first night. So we have Tuesday and Wednesday reserved. I don't mind spending 2 nights with you guys, but we'll see. And thank you so much for coming. It was really important, and we'll see you all Tuesday. If you have any questions between now and then, please feel free. You can call my office. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.